From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. The battle is on to replace Theresa May as the next British Prime Minister and Conservative Party leader, after May announced she would stand down on June 7th. She made the announcement outside her residence at Downing Street. However, she will remain as acting Prime Minister until her Conservative Party chooses a new leader, probably in July. May had little choice but to resign after members of her own cabinet forced her to suspend her fourth attempt to get Parliament to vote for her Brexit agreement with the European Union. The Prime Minister broke into tears as she finished her statement.
I tried 3 times. I believe it was right to persevere, even when the odds against success seemed high. But it is now clear to me that it is in the best interests of the country for a new Prime Minister to lead that effort. So I am today announcing that I will resign as leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party on Friday the 7th of June, so that a successor can be chosen. I've agreed with the party chairman and with the chairman of the 1922 committee that the process for electing a new leader should begin in the following week. I have kept Her Majesty the Queen fully informed of my intentions, and I will continue to serve as her Prime Minister until the process has concluded. To have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
Seven or more Conservative figures are likely to stand to replace Theresa May as leader of the Conservative Party and therefore as Prime Minister. The favourites, including Boris Johnson, are likely to push for Britain to leave the European Union, even without any agreement. The opposition Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn said that Theresa May was right to resign. He added whoever replaced her as leader of the Conservative Party must call for an election.
It was the right decision for the country for her to stand down?
Yes, because she clearly cannot command a majority in Parliament. She clearly has lost the confidence of her own MPs, and in all the discussions she's been having with her MPs, they've all said one thing to her, that they don't support her strategy. What she was offering, what had already been put on the table. Yes, we want to prevent a no-deal Brexit, and we will do everything in Parliament to prevent a no-deal Brexit. But the reality is, a new Conservative leader isn't going to solve the problem.
So what should be the first thing then that the new Prime Minister does when they come into office at the end of July, probably?
Call a general election, so that we can have an election to decide the direction we go as a country.
Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, has the details.
This Friday morning, British Prime Minister Theresa May resigned in a teary statement made in front of 10 Downing Street, her residence in central London. To journalists, she defended her record, said that she'd ultimately be unable to deliver on Brexit, and called on her successor to bring the country together. Now, as I said, she ended in a teary fashion, saying that it had been an honour for her to be Prime Minister. What happens next is that she will stay in place till the 7th of June, which means that she will oversee the state visit by Donald Trump between the 3rd and the 5th of June. And on the 7th, she will no longer be British Prime Minister, and a process will begin to look for her replacement from within her party. Now, the leader of the opposition of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, tweeted that it was the correct decision, but that what was needed now was a general election, as the government had shown themselves incapable of uniting the country. Now, in terms of who will take over, the front runners are Boris Johnson, the former foreign minister, who resigned from Theresa May's front bench. Now, he is liked by the party base. He's seen as a populist, as a maverick, although he has numerous controversies that surround him as a former mayor of London and as a politician that's been around, and he is not popular within the Conservative Party MPs. Another is Dominic Raab, who was Brexit minister, who also resigned, one of the many ministers who resigned under May's premiership. Now he and another one is the current Foreign Minister, Jeremy Hunt, although some are saying it would simply be Theresa May with trousers. So Theresa May has resigned. The government, what was widely expected to happen, has finally happened. Britain continues to be in a state of sort of paralysis politically, with the Brexit negotiations the Brexit agreement unable to be passed through Parliament, and the date now scheduled for Brexit in October. So whether we will get to October without a general election remains to be seen. 2 years ago, for the general election, people were talking about June being the end of May was a slogan that was used by those opposed to May. So 2 years later, it finally does appear that this has occurred.
That was Paolo Navarrete from London. The European Union has said May's resignation does nothing to change its position on the deal its members agreed with Britain. A spokeswoman for the EU Commission said, quote, "Our position is clear. The divorce agreement, the withdrawal agreement, cannot be reopened, cannot be renegotiated." Now Brussels could look into modifying a non-binding political declaration that accompanies the Brexit treaty to flesh out ambitions for future EU-UK ties.
We have set out our position on the withdrawal agreement, and on the political declaration, the European Council in the Article 50 format has set out its position, and we remain available for anyone else who will be the new Prime Minister.
But Spain has warned that a no-deal Brexit appears inevitable, paving the way for hardliners to take over. The spokeswoman for the government, Isabel Cela, said that the British government would be solely responsible for a no-deal exit and its consequences.
Under these circumstances, a hard Brexit appears to be a reality that is near impossible to stop. The British government, the British Parliament, are solely responsible for a no-deal exit from the EU and its consequences.
Telesur's political analyst Tariq Ali told us that May's resignation could be another step towards a split in the ruling Conservative Party.
I think what we are, in fact, observing is a de facto split in the Conservative Party. This is largely a party where the average age of the membership is between 55 and 60. Very few young people are joining this party. And it's a party in its death throes, literally, I mean, biologically, but now also politically. A number of Conservative members of Parliament have said that if Boris Johnson is elected leader, they will resign from the Conservative Party and obviously move to some sort of centrist formation. But it is, one has to say, a huge crisis for the British ruling class. They've had 3 years to come up with a plan to implement the referendum, which was, after all, voted in by a majority. I mean, over 17 million people voted to quit the EU. Instead, a bulk of the establishment has been working on ways to find ways to stop implementing this, looking for magic solutions, coming up with concessions to the EU which make the referendum largely irrelevant, to be perfectly frank. So I think Corbyn calling for a general election is absolutely correct. The Tories, they insisted on a referendum. They pushed a referendum through. They have not been able to deliver on the results of the referendum, and they're now in a very deep crisis.
Tariq Ali also said that Jeremy Corbyn had been right not to compromise with May on her deal, and that the Labour Party is now well placed for an early general election.
I think Corbyn is in a strong position, provided his own parliamentary party decides to back him and not start leaking stuff against him, not weakening Labour by attacking him non-stop, etc. There will be, I think, attempts to remove Jeremy Corbyn yet again before the next general elections, but let's hope they fail and let's hope they see sense. There are many Labour MPs who would rather Labour lost the election than see Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister. And this narrow-minded sectarian factionalism will not do Labour any good. But I think Corbyn's big strength is that he's the only Labour politician with a huge mass appeal, not simply to people of his generation, but to young people as well. And winning the youth to his side during this campaign will be very crucial.
Voting has begun in Ireland and the Czech Republic on day 2 of the European Parliament elections. Voters are casting their ballots after a campaign dominated by concerns over Britain's attempts to leave the bloc. Britain and the Netherlands voted on Thursday, with an exit poll showing a surprising result, with the Netherlands' left-wing Labour Party on course for victory. The rest of the EU will cast its ballots over the weekend before results begin to be published late on Sunday. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. The economic blockade against Venezuela is having a serious impact on food supplies for the population by preventing imports. To counter this, efforts are being made to boost local harvest and to expand urban agriculture.
Here in this public park lies an experimental center that produces organic fertilizers. Small farmers from around Caracas are trained here to produce food for national consumption. This is especially important since Venezuela has issues importing food and agricultural supplies due to the illegal blockade.
We must bear in mind that all pesticides were previously imported, and this has to lead a decline in food production. Now we need to produce our own agriculture supplies to ensure that we are able to plant our own food. This is fundamental for every revolutionary process.
We began as a center for urban agriculture. However, given the demand from the No Corner Country Plan, we are proposing the idea of producing 25,000 liters of bioproducts per month, which will be distributed to our farmers at the lowest possible cost.
The aim is to set up another 80 centers like this throughout the country to promote food production to meet the needs of the communities nearby.
We have been trying to find ways of planting in small spaces in the city of Caracas, using the fertilizers we produce here. We don't need to depend on having big areas to cultivate. We want to be able to produce ourselves, to meet our own needs.
In September 2017, 18 million food deliveries from the local food committees, or CLAPs, were blocked because of financial restrictions on paying the suppliers. In November of that year, another 23 food payments worth $39 million were blocked by international banks. This occurred again in May 2018, with 400,000 kilos of food blocked from leaving Colombia.
The entire population must join in food production. That will reduce the impact of the blockade imposed by the United States. The solution to this problem is to produce our own food. Unfortunately, historically, we've grown accustomed to living off the country's oil production. Now we see young people growing their own food. This is a step in the right direction, in light of the negative effects of the economic blockade. Now, people are forced to grow everything they consume, and that is the type of liberation we need.
The illegal blockade against Venezuela is estimated to have cost the country $30 billion. Economists calculate that with just the $1.2 billion of gold sequestered by the Bank of England, it would be possible to pay for food for some 6 million Venezuelan households for 6 months.
The U.S. Justice Department has announced 17 new charges against the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. He's still being held in detention in London after he was dragged out of the Ecuadorian embassy in April. Assange had taken asylum there since 2012. The United States is already seeking his extradition on one count of disclosing classified documents. The total 18 charges relate to violations of Espionage Act, and each carries a sentence of between 5 and 10 years. Let's listen to our correspondent, Alina Duarte, who has more on Assange's case.
Muy buenas tardes, así es, el fundador de WikiLeaks, Julian
WikiLeaks co-founder Julian Assange faces 17 new criminal charges which allege that he conspired with former Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to obtain and publish secret documents in 2010. The charges include the violation of the Espionage Act, which has prompted press freedom advocates to criticize the move, calling it a breach of the First Amendment of the Constitution relative to free speech and a free press. The 17 counts include 1 count of conspiracy to receive national defense information, 3 counts of obtaining national defense information, and 13 counts of disclosure of national defense information. Assistant Attorney General John Demers, the Justice Department's top national security official, said Julian Assange is no journalist and that no responsible actor, journalist or otherwise would publish the names of individuals he or she knew to be confidential sources. The U.S. State Department is accusing Assange of aiding and abetting Manning with stealing U.S. files and recklessly endangering confidential sources in the Middle East and China to benefit a foreign country. Assange is currently in London fighting extradition. If found guilty of the 17 charges, he can be jailed for close to 170 years. WikiLeaks has said that this is a threat to journalism and the First Amendment. Some media professionals are questioning what this sentence could mean for other journalists who will or have published confidential information.
That was Alina Duarte, our correspondent. And international organizations have sent a letter to Ecuador's foreign minister questioning the detention of Swedish software developer Ola Bini. Bini was arrested in April after being linked to Julian Assange. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, has more.
Several international organizations fighting against the arbitrary detention of Swedish software developer Ola Bini have published a letter addressed to Ecuador's Foreign Minister José Valencia. They are concerned about the legal process that Bini is facing in Ecuador. The country's prosecutor's office accuses Ola Bini of attacking the integrity of the national information system.
The request made by the UN and the Inter-American Commission is very important because what they express in that letter is very concerning.
The hearing to request bail for Ola Bini was set for May 23. However, it was delayed. Bini's lawyer questioned this decision. They say the prosecutor in charge of this case left the country after being ordered by the prosecutor's office to work on Julian Assange's investigation in London. They believe Ecuadorian authorities are trying to link Ola Bini to that case.
Unfortunately, the judge violated once again the rights of a detained person and said that the hearing must be delayed another week until the prosecutor in charge comes back to the country. They are trying to link us to Julian Assange again without a proper file.
Meanwhile, national and international organizations are still supporting Ola Bini and rejecting the actions taken by Ecuadorian authorities.
The Ecuadorian authorities received this letter a month ago, and they still haven't responded. When I talked to Ola, he told me he's worried about the foreign ministry ignoring this, but he also said that he's grateful to the international community, which thinks this case is a persecution. Maybe in the country it has political importance, but from abroad it looks like persecution against someone defending rights.
The bail hearing is expected to finally happen on May 29. Olavini's lawyers say they expect to get bail for Ola so he can defend himself as a free man. Denise Herrera, Telesur, Ecuador.
Residents in the Brazilian city of Barão de Cocais fear a nearby dam owned by the company Vale may collapse soon. Earlier this week, state environmentalists said a slippage in the embankment at one of Vale's mines could trigger a dam burst. Over 450 residents have already been evacuated from the area. The dam is less than 70 kilometers from Brumadinho, where toxic mud from a dam collapse by the same company killed more than 240 people in late January. The largest ice field in the southern hemisphere, besides Antarctica, has split in two as a result of climate change, according to scientists. The ice field is more than 12,000 square kilometers in size and is located between Chile and Argentina. Members of the Latin American Observatory of Environmental Conflicts said that the break is a result of poor political decisions in relation to climate change. Scientists added that a law to protect ice fields, as well as lakes and glaciers, is needed. Archaeologists in El Salvador continue to discover new clues about the daily life of the ancient Mayan town of Joya de Serén. In their latest excavation, archaeologists found a new structure resembling a winery, ceramic pots with seeds, and animal remains that were likely domesticated. The bones include deer, raccoons, and bones belonging to either a dog or a coyote. The once flourishing settlement was buried over 1,400 years ago by volcanic eruptions.
With that disease, this animal couldn't live in the wild. So it's very likely that this animal was domesticated or someone was taking care of it.
The liberation movement for Guinea-Bissau led a march in the capital Bissau to celebrate African Liberation Day and to show support for Venezuela. Guinea-Bissau is celebrating the hard-fought achievement of Africa's freedom from European colonial powers. Marchers are also protesting against the U.S. blockade on Venezuela and demanding an end to U.S. imperialism and intervention. The African Liberation Day march was also staged by the Economic Community of West African countries. More stories coming up. Stay with us.
Who's moving the chessmen? What interests motivate the actors behind each event?
Se despliega el tablero.
Uncritical Moves investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Thousands of people have joined protests around the world for the Global Fridays for the Future, calling on the governments to fight climate change. Students in the Portuguese capital, Lisbon, marched to Parliament, where they demanded that politicians take action. The strikers marched through the hilly streets of Lisbon, chanting slogans and carrying handwritten cardboard signs.
We are fighting for the environment, and because we believe that our future is possible and that our generation will be able to have a good future, as has happened until now. And that is why we are supporting this cause.
We are protesting for the environment to make the changes that we want to see in the world.
In Spain, hundreds of students walked out of school to march through central Madrid towards Parliament. Police put up barriers to prevent the young protesters from reaching the building. As part of the demonstration, the students decided to lay down just a few meters away from the parliament as they shouted slogans against climate change. And in Paris, youth protesters said that there is no planet B and that the EU governments should do more to protect the planet. More than 1 million youth from 110 countries were expected to take part in protests to show support of the movement launched by the 16-year-old Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg. Botswana has lifted a ban on elephant hunting. The country has the world's largest population of elephants, with more than 130,000. According to wildlife authorities, the animals are notorious for destroying crops. A prohibition on elephant hunting was introduced in 2014 after surveys showed declining wildlife population. But the government has defended its decision, saying the measure was only temporary, while assuring that the move will not reduce the elephant population. But some groups say hunting would actually help local communities, as trophy hunting brings much needed money.
It was never meant to be permanent. It was to observe what was happening in our ecosystem. So it must be clear from the outset and understood it was a suspension. Those who chose to call it a ban, call it a ban.
Following a landmark decision for LGBTQ rights in Asia, Taiwan has started to register its first official same-sex marriages. On Friday, 2 same-sex couples, one male, one female, were the first to enter the government office in the capital, Taipei, to sign their marriage certificates. This comes as Taiwan became the first country in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage last week. But the country remains divided over the decision, as opponents announced they would create a new political party to fight for its ban at the 2020 election. And with that, we end our news brief. But remember, you can find all of our stories by going to our website, telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, you can find us on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. And you can find us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.